Noob D&D Dad here, and we are on session 40 of my son's campaign on the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Also happens to be page 40, and this is the final session in this book. They have literally been to every single place in here. Now, to the other noob DMs out there, like me, don't be intimidated by the fact that this took 40 sessions in both my son's campaign and both the Army Vet campaign, because in both campaigns there is homebrew stuff, and I'm not rushing people along. They can go off on little side quests and they can explore, and sometimes sessions are actually kind of short, and so it takes multiple times to get through just one level. So I think you could actually run this with just one session per area, which would be a lot shorter. But mine, for the Army group that I'm DMing for, and for my son's group, they both took 40 sessions in this book. So the players at this point are level 7, and since we switched over to the new 2024 rules, I've started tracking XP, but also they had 2 more missions in the book. And the book has you level up per 2 missions. So I'm thinking after the Icespire Hold and then this Tower of Storms that I'm just going to give them a level, and view into the future. They are a little bit short on XP at the end of it, but I level them up to 8 after this anyway because they completed those 2 missions and also completed the whole book. Now, right off the bat, when the players come down here, they see a giant crab waving at them. And the Army veteran group killed the crab when it was waving at them, and they ate it. So it was very different to actually play a group that was like, oh, a creature's waving at us, like, let's try and make contact. There's actually all this text right here for the giant crab. So it starts here, and then it goes all the way down here. And that with the Army veteran group was completely disregarded because they killed the crab. But with my son and my friend's group, they started working with him, and they asked what his name was. So I got to go to my handy-dandy name rolling chart, which is on my embarrassingly sloppy page 1 of this whole campaign. So right here, I decided that when there's names, I'm just going to roll a d20, and this will be what the name starts with. And so 20 through, if they roll a 20, it could start with any of those. So they rolled an 18, or I rolled an 18. So I decided the crab's name is Robert. And Robert is very interested in these adventurers helping him put his master, the sea elf lady, to rest, who's turned into a banshee. And also I had him be kind of like sad and look off into the distance and think about prior relationships with girls. So the book says that they will get a +1 weapon from him out of the shipwreck if they help him. But these guys are level 7, so a +1 weapon would do them no good. So I decided to have it be a +2 weapon. So speaking of switching to the 2024 rules, it's actually time for them to get into their bastion. So they have a home back in Phandalin that they can turn into their bastion, maybe. So I need to dig into the bastion rules in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide and incorporate that into the next time. So the players actually did a little bit of a reverse time travel where we ended last session with them camping basically on the ridge above the lighthouse, but they realized that they really needed to organize their inventory, and so they asked if they could have in the past already gone to Phandalin. So they went there, they dropped off a bunch of stuff at their house. They've been picking up all these awesome tapestries that they're putting at their house, and then my son's been keeping track of the inventory, and it's been total chaos. And so my friend kind of stepped in and is helping manage like how many gemstones they have and magic items and money and stuff. Because I've been like, so how much money do you have? And he's like, my son, because he's just been like adding plus and minus every time they either get or spend money onto this huge paper. So we had to kind of go through it and figure out what they had. So a little bit of admin there. And my son's like, are we going to start playing now? And it's like, dude, you've been playing. Like, you managing your inventory, that's part of playing D&D. So we skip forward. It's been raining, so they slept in their wagon. And I decide that in the morning, it's just barely getting light. The rain is now trickling, and they start heading down the mountain. And my son sees this big rock right here, which is the cave that has the banshee in it. and he just decides to shoot a firebolt at it. So I'm like, okay, it hits it and it makes a little dry spot, right? Because the rock's wet. And then he's like, I'm gonna shoot again. So then he just shoots it like 3 or 4 times, and like I'm like, okay, and then it makes a little spark. And so he's just like building up in his head like this like conspiracy of how this firebolt is reacting with this rock. And I had to actually stop him. I'm like, so why are you doing this? Like, what are you trying to get out of this? Because it actually made the banshee inside of it scream, and also the harpies over at the lighthouse started flying around a little bit, and they could just barely see them, that they're like humanoid type things with wings. But as he was doing that, I was like, okay, well, these enemies are going to be a lot more like aggressive and prepared because you're being so loud. Speaking of harpies, the book recommends to have a max of 3 harpies, but I'm like, these guys are level 7, they can take it. So I made it be 5 harpies. So then they go down and have a great conversation with Robert the Crab, who basically gives them the quest of going to the lighthouse to get the conch shell to put this banshee to rest. So the players really want to go around the cave so that they can avoid the banshee. But I decided that the only way through it is the cave. And I decided that they need to pass this horrifying visage. So fortunately they did pass, and then they were able to basically talk to her, and so she's like, I'm scary. And then they're like, hey, we want to go find this thing and bring it back to you and put you to rest. And she's like, oh, okay. So she realizes that her friend Robert the Crab is helping her and that these guys are sincere, and so she lets them pass. Not the case with the army veteran group. They just had to fight her because they wouldn't talk to the crab. It's been so fun now that I've done 40 sessions of my son in this and 40 sessions with the army group in this, just to see how completely different it turns out. Like, I would totally love running this again for another group of people of any age. Honestly, from age 5 and up. This is such a good adventure. But it's been super fun just seeing the different ways they act. So I kind of act in the short that I made, but have you guys ever done the same book for multiple groups? And how has that gone? So I'd love to hear about that. So as the players are crossing the causeway, they start hearing the harpy music, the harpy song. And fortunately, they pass the save, which they don't do later. And they also decide to actually plug up their ears and wrap like a headband around their ears so that they can't hear the harpy song. And then they're using sending stones to communicate. So I thought that was interesting that they were just really determined to not get caught by the music of the harpies. So as they come up here, I have 2 of the harpies just fly around the corner and attack them right away. And I'm playing the enemies a little smarter. Like in the past, I've had fun playing the enemies like idiots, but now that they're a higher level and that they have great items and amazing spells, like I like to play the enemies a little bit smarter. So anyway, these harpies are trying to fight these guys and trying to do their little songs and trying to get them, and it eventually the one is like singing, and my son decides to like shoot her in the throat with a firebolt to stop the singing. And anyway, they overcome them, but it's a fun little encounter on like the porch of this lighthouse. And as a reminder, my son is a wizard and my friend is a sorcerer, so we just got like 2 spellcasters here. So one habit that they've come up with is that anytime they come up to a door, they always listen at the door, and then I get to decide like what sounds would be coming out of that room. So the whole time they're in here, they're hearing the beating of the heart because the heart is up in the lighthouse here. So they go in this room, and it's kind of an empty courtyard or just like lobby type place. And then they go in here, and this altar is humming. So I decide to have the altar be humming with energy. And so if you touch the altar, you get imbued with the Charm of Storms, and you can cast Lightning Bolt 3 times. And so I like really want them to touch it, but I don't want to just be super obvious. So I'm just saying that it has like this hum and that there's this rod that goes down into it. And then they're just like not touching it. They're like, we should destroy it. This is bad. And I'm just like, don't destroy it. You want to use it. But I decided to just have there be like handprints on it. Like people have touched this in the past, but they still don't touch it. They still want to destroy it. So my wife was kind of around and I had her come read it. What happens if they touch it? And she's like, have they done it yet? And I'm like, no. And then she's just like, can I like be like a ghost sneaking hints to them? And I was like, sure. So she just was like touch stuff. Like, that's funny. They totally did not pick up on it and did not touch the altar at this point. They touch it later. But I also decided to flourish the description in the book and decide that the altar is like stone, but there's like crystals throughout it. So just trying to make it more want to touch. And so then my friend's like, oh, we are so gonna clear this lighthouse and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna chisel this stuff out of there. And I'm just like, yes. So they look under the door here and they can see some shadows moving around and they can hear stuff. So that is where the remaining 3 harpies are, which I was really hoping they would kick down the door and fight them. But they decided they wanted to go back up north to the other room that has the half-orc sitting on the throne, who has his chest, a hole in his chest because his heart is up in the tower, but he's wearing octopus hide armor. But he still has this stat block, AC 13. So I'm like, no, this is like the big bad dude here. So I made his AC 18 because I figured this giant octopus hide armor is actually like pretty legit stuff. So, and I also had his spells, like his lightning spell be, his lightning spell was a level 3, and then I had his thunder wave be a higher level. So I kind of gave him like spell slots so that he could just be a little bit more powerful. So I thought they had a really good fight with him where they're like shooting him with stuff and then trying to hide behind the corners of this door. And then he ends up running outside there because they just were hiding after he lightning bolted my friend and almost killed him, but did some good damage. And he runs out there in between them and just does a thunder wave. So I just love the idea of this guy doing a thunder wave in this enclosed area, just slamming these guys against the wall. So anyway, they have a glorious battle with this guy and totally win. And the conch shell survives the battle because there was a possibility that if they were too rough that it could get destroyed. And they check out his armor and it's like this awesome armor. And they're like, wait a minute, how could he cast spells with this armor? And I was like, I don't know. But maybe because he's not like a sorcerer or wizard like you guys, he's a different like class. I don't know. But basically it's hide armor that has AC 18. So I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know what price I'm going to have it be, but they're going to try and sell it at some point in the future, I'm sure. So I had them roll on the personal treasure on like page 120-ish in the new DMG. So they got like 100 gold. And then I'm doing this thing where I'm like, okay, you have no business getting any additional treasure out of this person or this specific spot. But if the fates align, I'm going to let you do like a magic roll or whatever. I don't tell them that, but I actually had them each roll half of a D100. And in my head, if it landed on 100, then they would actually get to go to the magic table and do a magic roll to get an item. So it's just like, that's my way of being like, you have no business of getting an additional item, but if the fates align through the dice, sure, let's do it. And I've kind of been doing that more and more lately. And so I end up telling people like, oh no, your roll isn't good enough on this D100 roll. And they're like, oh, but I'm trying to help them understand that this is like an additional roll that they have no business getting an additional item. So I think both groups are starting to understand that these are additional rolls that are just tempting the fates. So one thing that was funny is my friend, so they said that they plugged up their ears, right? So my friend unplugs his ear to like listen at a door or something. And I'm like, and you have to make the saving throw for the harpy song. So here's the harpy. You can look up a picture of her on your own time. This isn't that kind of channel. But yeah, the harpy song. Here it is. So my friend had to do the saving throw because he unplugged his ears and he totally failed it. So he gets charmed and is having to use his speed to walk towards them. And I'm just like, yes, he's going to bump into the altar as he walks through the door and they're going to have this big fight. But he used all of his speed. And then my son the whole time was like trying to stop him. And then he ended up passing it again when it was his turn again. So I was like, okay, I still haven't succeeded in getting them to touch the altar at this point. So they really want to get this conch shell down to that banshee to like achieve this awesome objective. So they're on their way down the zigzaggy pathway, and 3 harpies come flying around the corner, the remaining 3, and I have them doing their song just in case anyone's listening if they take their ear things off, and they're just at this point they're just like done with this. And so my son, or who went first? Oh, it was my friend. He uses his wand of fireballs and just like boom, and does a huge amount of damage. Let's see, 35 to the ones that failed and 17 to the one that passed. So just right off the bat, just huge damage. And then let's see, what else did they do? Yeah, just magic missiles, and they handle these guys pretty good. And I really like to have, when the enemies roll a natural 1 for their attack, I love to just have something crazy happen. So on an earlier combat, the claw attack, she rolled a natural 1, so I had her actually hit the ground with her foot and like break off at like a talon or whatever is on her feet. And then on this one, when the 3 flew around, one of them that was attacking them with a club rolled a natural 1, and I had her swing it and just lose the club. And I'm like, I like that as a result of the natural 1. Oh, the one that broke her toenail, I had her take a D4 damage and ended up just being 1. But I like having a natural 1 mean something, so that like when there's certain die rolls that hit, like people are like dreading or cheer. Like I love that there's like these little variables that cause like these emotions in the players. So they go into the cave, and I don't have too much fanfare. They're basically like, here is your conch shell. She goes up to it, she touches it, and as she fades away, she just says thank you, and she disappears. And the conch shell remains, and so they can go sell that or whatever. So Robert, the crab, is like, okay, you did your end of the bargain. I will go get you a treasure out of this shipwreck. So he comes back with a +2 hand axe, because I just spiced up the treasure in the book a little bit to a +2. It was +1, but level 7, I think, have no use for a +1. So they do a long rest in the cave, recharge all their spells, which had been depleted pretty good. And I decided, kind of a little bit later, but I'll tell you right now because it's relevant right now. So with the Banshee, I decided that they get the XP for the Banshee because they dealt with her. So she is a challenge for 1100 XP. So I'm deciding to add that into their total because they dealt with her peacefully and got her to go away. So I think that is a perfectly good reason to give XP. So obviously killing something gives the XP, but what do you think of people getting XP for like dispatching the Banshee in a peaceful way? Because it just felt right. And after the long rest, so my son is playing a human character, so he gets heroic inspiration, which is the new cool thing, instead of normal inspiration. And then I decided my friend gets heroic inspiration for participating in basically putting this Banshee to rest. I think that's worthy of heroic inspiration. So they need to go back over to the lighthouse because the heart thing is still beating. There's still some mystery going on. And they basically convince the crab to go over there with them. The crab's like, sure, I'll go over there with you. He goes over and looks at the body of the anchorite. And I have the heartbeat of the lighthouse beating faster now because this body is like about to regenerate. Well, in 16 more hours, it's going to regenerate. But I like the idea that the heartbeat is going faster now to kind of create urgency on the map. And they're like, hey, do you want to go upstairs with us? And the crab's like, nope. He's like, I'll stay down here. So I do like the NPCs to have, like, sometimes I roll dice for their decisions, but other times I'm like, no, he doesn't want to go up there. So they go out onto the balcony before going upstairs to the Harpies area. And they find a Harpy egg. Now, I don't know if Harpies have eggs, but in this game, they have eggs, and they find a Harpy egg. And an awesome discussion ensues between my 9-year-old son and my friend about the ethics of what to do with a Harpy egg. Do you take it and you raise this Harpy? And does this Harpy can become good by the way that you raise it? Or is it an inherently evil creature? Should you just destroy the egg right now? Should you leave the egg to the elements? What should you do? Or I think at one point, my son, and I'm not going to hold him responsible for this. I don't know, maybe he was tired, but he's like, well, we could raise it, and then if it turns bad, we could kill it. It's just like, that is a horrible thing to say. I don't think he understood exactly the implications of what he was saying. But talking about what to do with an egg, which is a person in utero, it's like, do we kill it? Do we leave it? Do we try to raise it and change it to our beliefs from its chaotic evil? It was very interesting. And what happened to it? It's perfect. Stay tuned. But in the meantime, my friend's like, I want to get some of this crystal out of this altar. So he starts hitting it with his pickaxe, and I'm like, that's close enough to touching it. So his eyeballs start sparkling with the Charm of Storms, and he now has the 3 charges. But then the hum of the altar goes away, right? And the book says that if it gets struck by lightning, I think like 2 times, then it can get charged again. And I'm like, I guess I forgot that. I was thinking it was 1. But my friend starts like using like shocking grasp and like all these like electric like lightning spells to try to charge it up. And basically each spell that he does on it, I'm like, you can hear the hum getting like louder. And eventually he uses one of his lightning charges to shoot it. And I'm like, sure, it's charged up. So then my son goes over there and touches it. So then he has 3 lightning charges and my friend has 2 lightning charges. Because why not? Okay, so with this harpy egg, so they're like, one of the options they also had was like, maybe we can just give it to Robert the Crab. Maybe he'll want it. Maybe he'll want to raise a harpy. So they go to Robert the Crab and they're like, do you want this harpy egg? And he's like, yeah. He's like reaching up with his 2 pincers. He's like, clunk, 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 clunk. He's like, yeah, I want it. It's like both of his hands he's reaching up. And they're like, okay. My son gestures. He gestures handing an egg over and saying, here you go. Raise this as your own. And then as the crab takes it, I just have him immediately just crush it with his pincers and just start eating it. Just like, I was having to hold back on the description so hard because there's just like gore and pieces going everywhere. And I even had it like splatter on their pants. My son was horrified. Maybe I shouldn't be laughing about traumatizing him, but it was so funny because he's like, here, raise this as your own. And it's just like crunch and just like shoves in his mouth. I really went to town with the like sound effects too of this crab eating this thing. So that was a highlight for me. I don't know if you think that's funny or disgusting or super disturbing, but it totally made my night. So that ethical decision was over. There will be no raising of harpies. So they go up to the lighthouse. This heart is extremely bright, and I keep telling him over and over and over it's extremely bright. And my son's like, I'm going to shoot it. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to look at it? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to look at it and shoot it. And I'm like, okay, you're blinded for a minute. Anyway, so they shoot it. They eventually kill it. And, it shrinks and kind of implodes and disappears. And now it's time to go into these wrecks and go for treasure. So they had found a potion of water breathing in a chest on the balcony where the harpies are. And so now it's time to go down there and get the treasure. And my son's just like, gulp, gulp, gulp. Like he just like drinks this potion of water breathing. And it's like, okay, you have water breathing for 24 hours. And so they're like, okay, what do we do? Like, how do we get down there? They're trying to like talk to the crabs. They're like, are there going to be sharks? How did you get there without sharks? And he's like, well, I just hurried down and grabbed something and left. So I kind of spilled the beans a little bit that if you just go down and grab something, you might not get shark attacked. So here's what happens. My son goes down there to one of these wrecks and he's failing every investigation check, just rolling terribly, like investigation, perception, like everything you could possibly do to try and search this thing. He's just failing and he's rolling over and over because he's down there. So I'm like, okay, it's probably time for the shark to attack. Like this is taking forever. So I have Dagger Maw, the named aggressive shark, come after him. And meanwhile, we were having a discussion with my wife because she's a scientist about what happens when lightning hits water, specifically salt water. And so we're talking about how it kind of will go spread out about 20 feet in a circle and 10 feet down and just be dissipate. But in that area, it's still lethal. So we decided to use that for our game. I know it's not a physics simulator, but we decided that that would be the result of if you shoot a lightning bolt at the water, is that it would be turn and dissipate 20 feet in a circle and 10 feet down, that it would still be dangerous and do its normal damage. So it was cool that we had this conversation about like, wait a minute, what does happen when lightning hits water? This shark battle does not go well. So the shark eventually gets injured, which triggers the 2 other sharks to show up and start circling. So my son's like, can I swim out of here? And I'm like, they're circling you. So he's getting stressed. So it's getting really, really late at night and he's getting stressed. And these sharks are circling him. And they end up 2 of them attacking him. He takes 40 damage. He only has 4 hit points left. He is starting to feel like, you can tell that he's kind of losing hope. Like he seems like he's getting really sad. But me and my friend are like talking him through it. We're like, you can do this, you can do this. And my friend's like, hey, even if you die and if I recover your body, like a few days from now, like the rod of resurrection will be charged up. We can use it on you. And that wasn't cheering up my son at all. Anyway, so they're using the sending stones to talk to each other, and he's like, hey, swim down really deep so that I can shoot a lightning bolt at these fish. And then my son's hiding in the wreckage, and he drinks a health potion in there. So it's actually a really intense battle, and my friend and the crab are up in the lighthouse tower kind of shooting down at the sharks. So it's kind of a cool thing. And they used a magic rope, or a rope of climbing, to go out one of the broken windows that was broken because of all the thunder waves going off from the battle with the half-orc. But my friend had a good point. So eventually these sharks are injured, and so there's more blood. And he's like, so are these sharks going to keep going after him? Or are they going to go after the blood? And I'm like, oh, okay. So at first I'm like, okay, if they roll a natural 1, they break off and go after their friend. And then once they were both injured, how did I do it? Anyway, once there was even more blood in the water, I was like, okay, now if they roll 1 through 5 on a d20, then they will break contact and go attack their own friend, right? Because the blood thing. And they ended up rolling a 5 on that time. And so they kind of break contact and go after their buddy. And then I think from there, they killed him pretty good because they start eating their buddy. So then I didn't increase the sharks for a few reasons. 1, because the session had been going for a while and it was getting really late at night. And 2, because why? I think it has just been going on and on. I think it would just be tedious at this point. So I kind of let my son just keep diving down and basically getting the treasure at the other locations, the other shipwrecks. So I decided to spice up the treasures underwater with an additional magic roll. So we did a D100 and then a D100 to see. So in the magic getting item section of the new DMG, I'm a cool kid because I use the abbreviation for the DMG. So right here, page 218. So to see what rarity they get, so he rolled like a 10, so that means he's going to get a common item. So then I decided that I wanted it to be either an arcana, an implement, or a relic, not a weapon, because they already got a weapon. And they're casters, they don't really need weapons. So had him roll a d6 for that, have that decide what kind of item, and then they rolled a d100 on the common scale and ended up getting a scroll of detect magic. So he was not impressed with that. But again, it's extra treasure for the area, so whatever. Speaking of extra treasure, now that they've kind of vanquished all the enemies on the whole map, they don't really know this, but they're kind of feeling safer, and they have this wand of secrets. So they're like, we're going to use the wand of secrets. And it's like almost 2 a.m. at this point. So I let them find something. So I let them do a D100 for the rarity, and it comes out rare. So then I let them roll a D4 for what the item will be, right? So a D4, so Arcana, Implement, Armament, and Relic. So they roll Relic, and they get a Potion of Superior Healing, which my son was annoyed with, but it's like, dude, this Adabra at town can only make these healing potions so quickly, so like, don't be upset by this. Plus, you've got a lot of items. Okay, so that is session 40. So I count up the XP from the Icespire hold and from this place, and it's still a little bit low. They need 11,000 to go from 7 to 8, and it's still a little bit low, but I'm like, no, let's keep the pattern of you did 2 missions in the book, that gains a level. So I'm letting that get them from level 7 to 8, and honestly, they did a ton. It's just, I think the reason they didn't get as much XP is because they had so many NPCs helping them with the 2 dragons at the other place. But I still decided that the 2 missions were sufficient to get that 7 to 8 level up. So what do you think of that? Now, so the plan, just so you know, so the Icespire Peak book is over. However, they have populated the Sword Coast area with all manner of stuff, and I have really homebrewed this area. Like, I had Mount Hot now go off as a volcano, so there's like the populations are moving around. Like, it is a very like fleshed out area. So they're still in the area, but we're not beholden to the book anymore. So they're at level 8 now, which we'll have to do next session. We'll probably talk about Bastions next session too. But also, they need to get to level 10 so that they can start the Vecna Eve of Ruin book, because that's what we decided. So one idea that I have, and we're probably going to stick with it if I can figure out how to do it, is we are going to do the Candlekeep Mysteries to get from maybe all the way from 8 to 10, because as I understand it, these are like standalone adventures that are designed for levels 1 through 16, but they're designed to take you through those levels. So I should be able to go in the book and find the level 8 mission. They can do it, and now they're level 9, and I can find a level 9 mission, brings them to 10, right? And then I can have them come across some Vecna cultists or whatever to bring into that next book. So if you have experience running any of these, I would love to know about it, because I've kind of cracked this book and started reading it. And I'm like, gosh, I'm opening up to the missions and it doesn't say like this is the level 8 one. Maybe it's just the 8th one is the level 8 one. Maybe it's that simple, but why don't they say that? Also, there's a lot of stuff just with Candlekeep that I think you have to know to run these things. So I'm excited and nervous. Let me know. I got this on like huge discount sale and I had really good reviews, so I was like, why not? Let me know if you have any advice on running this, because that's what I'm thinking is pretty much level 8 to 10 if we can swing it, unless they do some crazy stuff in elsewhere Sword Coast to get to level 10. So that's the plan. So we have finished the book, and I know I've said it over and over, but it is huge for me as a noob DM just to have finished a module now twice, right? So once with my son and well, first with the Army Vet group, and now with my son shortly thereafter, and they both took 40 sessions. The Army Vet group is now 7 sessions into Curse of Strahd, which they're going to do that, and then they're going to do Vecna. So obviously I'm still catching up on the recaps of these, so please stay tuned to see how it all turns out. Actually, by the time you see this one, I probably will be caught up, because I'm recording this out of order. This is like, we're like December 29th right now. Anyway, I decided I better record these closer to when I actually do them so that I don't lose the details. So I'm going back and having to look at my notes, which are, you've seen them in a few videos. They're a little messy because they're really just designed for me to be able to read them. But if it's been several weeks, I'm trying to recap from these old notes that I just wrote in shorthand. It's a little bit hard. Anyway, thank you so much for watching all of these recaps, and let me know what you want to see in the future, or please share any advice that you have. I am still consider myself a noob DM, like by far. I still need to get into the books, learn stuff, and get more experience. So I love all of your advice, and I feel so honored to have you here following me. So thank you very much. And I will see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.